everybody, welcome to Wingtalk. This is Steve Schlesinger. I'm your host. You're about to not learn anything today, but we're going to have a great time not learning anything. And we've got the right kind of panel today for this very special occasion, which is our 4-year anniversary of the INAV Fixed Wing Group and the 3-year anniversary of Wingtalk. So with us, as always, is our partners in crime, Mr. Darren Lyons, all the way from the UK. Darren, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. Actually, I'm tired, but I think Henrik's got me beat on that, to be honest. But yeah, no, it's going to be fun. We'll make it fun as always.
Fantastic. And then, as always, our pilot in charge, all the way from Germany, Mark Hoffman. Mark, how you doing today?
Yeah, hi, I'm doing great, but I'm also pretty tired. I think that we'll be sleepy around here, so we should maybe talk about gliders a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you about marzipan, that wonderful holiday treat from Germany. Do you know anything about it?
I hate marzipan. I hate that stuff.
Somehow it made it to the United States, so thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. Keep it.
You guys kept the cola beer, but you gave us the marzipan. Thank you so much. Hey, speaking of someone else from Germany, all the way from another part of Germany is Drunk Uncle. Henrik, how you doing today?
Hi, Steve. Drunk Uncle. Yeah, I love you too.
Oh, fantastic. Everything. We're going to be... What are your thoughts on marzipan before we get on to the main topic?
Actually, I like marzipan quite a lot. And it's the best marzipan is from Lübeck, which is about like 10 minutes from me. And yeah, really, really love the stuff.
Okay. Well, everybody, when you've got the lousy marzipan they make in the United States, put a care package together and send it to Henrik, because he'll eat all of it.
No, not the lousy stuff you got.
Fantastic. Okay, so Mark, we are going to talk about INAV 6.0. Mark and Darren, well, all of us actually, but Mark knows all the updates on this. And so we haven't really spent a lot of time on Wingtalk talking about INAV 6.0. So what is the status and what's going to be so amazing about this? And you can kind of give us an update on what's going on with INAV 6.
Yeah, so I think we have talked about a lot of the new features during the last Wingtalk. Darren also made a fantastic video about what's actually implemented already and what's coming. He has a very nice overview, so check out also his channel, of course. Right now, the development is in full progress, I would say. The developers are still working on some of the new features, and there are still some things in the pipeline that might come. Actually, I was testing today a combination of the new features I used for a complete autonomous landing system of INAV based on the programming framework. And for that, I had to use a few of the new features like the waypoint path tracking, waypoint turn smoothing, wind estimator, and also the fantastic new waypoint action triggers that Jonathan Hudson has implemented into the waypoint system, and Darren has implemented the other side on the logic condition system. And this is actually a very cool thing where you can select waypoints and enable one or more of up to 4 user action triggers, and these triggers you can then use in your programming framework, for example, to run a program. For example, you can turn on your camera recording at a specific waypoint, then turn it off on another waypoint. You can also make like candy drops at specific points in the mission. You can measure the distance from one waypoint onwards, or when you're approaching a waypoint to measure the distance to the next waypoint. All this stuff, all with the logic programming. It's really cool things you can do with that. Darren, you want to say something?
The cool thing with the user actions, because obviously the candy drop you could just do with a waypoint trigger. But the cool thing with the user actions is they're repeatable, so you can put the same action on multiple waypoints to repeat the task. So that's why they're really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And what I did today was finally tested in real life a complete auto land feature with these user actions that automatically tells the plane at a specific altitude and specific points, even with a ground proximity sensor, a LiDAR I've installed on the Bixler 2, to deploy the flaps automatically during approach, then cut off the motor at a specific altitude, glide the last way in, do a flare, touchdown, disarm and disable the flaps all by itself. You can find that video also on my channel. It's just like an hour ago I uploaded the full flight. So really cool stuff coming in INAV 6.0.
So is this something that is when you, this automatic landing you had, was that something you did on your Bixler because you had the ability to have flaps and all those other cool things on that plane?
Yes, exactly. I did that on the Bixler because this is basically my test platform now, where I put on airspeed sensor, compass, flaps, all that stuff, and this I basically use for INAV development test stuff.
And the thing that's also kind of really interesting about this is that when you say you can turn a camera on and get to a certain waypoint, that was always been one of the things that has always kind of bummed me out about up to this point about this, where you would have to literally take off and start filming, you know, and you would get all this video in high resolution, and then you get to the spot where you want to get to. Sometimes you have to fly quite a distance to get to where you want to get to turn to where you really want to record it. And I guess what you're saying is you can get to the waypoint, the camera can turn on, so you save all that video editing later on, and then you can go through. And is it possible when you get to the waypoint, because a lot of times when you're trying to get that beautiful shot, sometimes the plane starts rolling a bit, or you might have something in your way, or maybe the shot wasn't just quite perfect yet. You can go back and repeat it, and the camera will turn on again when you get to that waypoint?
Yes, totally. If you just repeat the waypoint mission all over, then it will just do the exact same actions and run the exact same programs again. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. That sounds pretty cool.
You could do that before, just with the waypoint action rather than the user action. The new part that would help that is you can now see the distance to the next waypoint. So you could say when there's only 50 meters to the next waypoint, turn the camera on, and then at the waypoint, trigger the camera to start recording. So that's one of the new bits, but you could already, with the waypoint action, turn the camera on and start recording. But the user actions are repeatable. So you could have like waypoint 6, turn the camera on with user action 1, and then waypoint 7, turn the camera off, then maybe waypoint 16, turn the camera back on using user action 1 again. So it's the same code.
Yeah, because sometimes, go ahead.
Yeah, a friend of mine who or he might have very nice use to that. He works for a company, they do wildlife control. So what they do is they have very tiny little signal transmitters, like the size of pinky fingernail. They can send beacon signals once every second or so, for about 2 to 3 weeks in a row. And what they are doing is they gluing them on some wild animals, releasing them out in the wilds again, and then monitor them how they move over time, over the year, or just during some times of the year. And what he is currently doing is working on a system where they use fixed rings. I think his current experimental plane is an AR Ring Pro. He modified a lot, and he has a Raspberry Pi on there with a receiving system for these beacons, and very long, thin titanium antennas along the leading edge of the ring. And what he does is he flies waypoint missions with a specific pattern, and this Raspberry Pi will record the signal strength it gets from every single beacon, base and map them to the position and time where the plane currently is, and with that they can create a heat map where all the transmitters currently are. The problem is that these receivers are so sensitive that he has to disable everything on the plane that transmits any signal. This includes the VTX and even the telemetry on his radio. So, and that was basically the idea where this user action feature comes from when he told me about that, that he will be able to create a mission at specific waypoints, completely disable the power to his receiver and also to the video transmitter, then fly a few waypoints and at specific points just power it up so he can check the status of the plane and then power them down again to continue the signal measurements. And that's basically the idea where that comes from, to have actions based on waypoints.
Interesting. And you were mentioning about the landing as well. So it's still the experimental phase, sounds like, right now, but how is it working out?
Oh, the landing worked fantastic. I tried that before in the hardware in the loop simulation. We also talked about that in the last show, where we can use a real flight controller to control a plane in the X-plane flight simulator. And there I already tested that, all the logic conditions, all the landing patterns, but unfortunately there I only have the virtual barometer, not the actual LiDAR ground sensor. This I had to add manually without testing it and then testing it in the field today, but that worked fantastic. I must admit, the big slot today landed smoother than I usually do.
That sounds good. I mean, that's one thing I think people get really freaked out about when it comes to learning to fly is, getting the plane up there and also getting the plane down, and also everything in between. But usually the landing, they want to have a smooth scheduled landing as opposed to finding it in the trees or going nose first. So this sounds like, how hard was this to set up though? I mean,
it took me a few days. I mean, I can get up the GitHub page for that. Just give me a second and then I can share it at least with the stream. Unfortunately, I can wait a second. I can show it to you as well.
I mean, in Mark's defense, he doesn't touch down that bad, but let's just think about the possibilities of that. I mean, when you're on a flying field out there with all the LOS guys, and you see those big scale planes, you see gliders, you see expensive stuff. And most of the wrecks that happen are in the final approach. Let's say they get too slow and stall. They get a gust at the very end just before touchdown and then stall. Or they touch the ground with a wingtip and do a turnaround. If you could just hit auto land in such a situation, and you could save, let's say, 2K or 3K of investment just because you had that function on a flip of a switch, why not?
Yeah. So yeah, this is the wait a second. This is the GitHub page. No, that's not the GitHub page. 1 second. Yeah, here we go. This is the GitHub page about that feature request, and here you can also see all the documentation, how my idea was how that should work. So basically you select one specific point where you plan on touching down, and based off that point INAV will automatically do a loiter first to detect the wind direction, and based on that wind direction it will select one of up to 4 different approach directions you can set for the safe home locations, and then it just plans basically 3 waypoints: the one where the approach starts, the one where the glide starts, and one go around waypoint, just in case you have to abort to go around and then loiter there. And it started at the beginning with, I think, 10, 12 logic conditions, and I added a lot of safety features and switches and stuff. So this is currently the logic that does all the landing system.
Oh. That's insane. Look at that.
Yeah, so it's all documented. I can post the link in the chat as well, and yeah, everyone can have a look. But to adapt that for your own plane, it's a little bit of work to get that going on a different plane, because it's specific to my channel setup, how I have set that to my pitch angles and all that stuff.
But at least we're getting rolling on this, and we can keep going further with it later on, make it easier. It looks good. It looks fantastic. All right, so aside from the waypoint updates, is there anything else about the waypoints we didn't touch on?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think we talked about the waypoint path tracking in the past, and also the turn smoothing. So when you plan a waypoint mission, INAV can now precisely follow the track between the two waypoints instead of just heading directly to the next one. By the way, this was the first time today I used that feature on a plane with an actual rudder, and it was so much more precise than on a delta wing with no rudder. It was really just one turn, go back, and it's precisely on track. You can really see how it's crabbing in the wind, and even when the plane slows down at the end, so the relation between airspeed and wind speed from the side shifts. You see how the angle into the wind raises during landing before it touches down. So this is really working well, and the new navigation system of INAV 6.0 is just perfect. It's just working really well. Okay, so we're in beta right now of INAV 6.0. I believe it's on the second release candidate. No, it's still on. We have no further release right now. It's on feature preview 1. So feature preview 1 is only the new Horizon Drift fix, the new AHRS, together with the early versions of that path tracking stuff. Where a lot changes since then, but there's no further release right now. And I think there's also no further release planned until beta or release candidate comes, maybe in February or so. Okay, so we're looking at February before this is really released, and I mean, I think some before we get the release candidates out and people can get their hands on the full Monty, not just the preview. Yeah, I think the final release, as Pavel said, will likely be in March. And so mid to end March, and in February, a beta or release candidate phase could start. Yeah. So what do you think about this, Darren? I mean, you were a proponent for getting this to once every 9 months, or maybe once a year for INAV updates. And how do you think this is rolling out so far?
I never really liked the 9 months. I must admit, I prefer like 6 or 12, just because then it's the same time every year. It's just easier to remember. What about this time? I mean, this rollout in February. This is kind of. I mean, this is because of such a big change and wanting to have a decent amount of test time with it. And it's, we probably could have got away with a December release still, because it's actually worked out really well. But to be honest, I'm quite liking the longer gap, because I've still got stuff to get into 6.0. So I don't mind it. And then I think the plan is to have the next release around October time, and then after that, possibly yearly. I'm a proponent for yearly, because this is, it's like what happens is you the way it is, what was currently was you would release right at the start of summer for 88% of the world. So everyone's got their plane built. Then all of a sudden they have to go back through and get restarted again on the INAV update and go through and do the auto tunes and do their adjustments, and so by the time that they get the flying season in middle to later summer, things are going great. And then as
where we're at right now, and this was the time of year we would normally have the INAV update. It's like, okay, here's another one right now, and I'm kind of busy with other things, and what are we doing with this? And I'll get to it when I get to it, kind of thing. So there wasn't really, that was the other problem. There wasn't a lot of beta testing going on because a lot of people are locked inside, not able to fly.
Yeah, I mean, October seems pretty reasonable to me. But for Northern Hemisphere, it's close to the end of the flying season anyway. So most people think, I'll wait till the winter and then update. And for the Southern Hemisphere, it's sort of springtime. So it's just sort of getting started. So they still have the whole season to fly with the new version. But also it gives developers a lot of time in the summer to actually test this new code. So yeah. I think it works out the best that way for everybody, really.
Yeah, I would like to see like sometime in early January where they have the first release candidate come out, and though that only it limits INAV testing really the release candidates to the people who can go out and fly. So yeah, I don't know if I can put a vote in. I'd say let's do the way it is right now. Let's move it to once a year. What is so, Mark? Besides the improved map waypoint missions and the auto landing, is there any other really killer features that are coming out with? And then, of course, the Horizon Drift fix. What else is INAV 6 coming out with that's worth the wait?
One interesting feature that I have requested, I think early this year, was a manual emergency land function, and I think Bredhoven has worked on that already, but there is no PR yet, so it's not yet on GitHub. And what that is supposed to do, that it allows the pilot to manually trigger an emergency land, but GPS assisted. So basically, the way he wants to implement it now is that if you are on a fixed wing or multi-rotor as well, and you switch 4 times within 2 seconds into position hold and back into another mode, the craft will enter an emergency landing mode. So it will basically position hold with a specific descent rate, and then it will just go down until it hits the ground all the way, and even ignore the phase safe. And the reason for that is if you fly, for example, long range, or you fly just a little bit further away, you realize, okay, you have a problem, you're running out of battery, whatever makes you think you cannot make it back anymore. This allows you to emergency land in a safe area where you can first go over like an empty field, for example. Then you trigger the emergency land and you know the plane will go down there. The problem is if you run out of battery and you have to do an outside landing, at one point you will lose the video signal, because as soon as you go close to the ground, you lose video, you lose your RC link, especially if there are obstacles in between. And then phase safe would kick in and would go full throttle and try to climb out, and that might kill your battery. That might move your plane like 1 or 2 kilometers further away from that point where you had last contact, and you have no control where it goes down if the battery completely dies. And this is basically a way to safely get down the plane on the ground without losing it and without putting anyone else in danger.
Fantastic. So Darren, question for you. What we have all these really neat features coming out with INAV 6. Are we running out of ideas for INAV 7, or is there still more stuff in the pipeline we have yet to work on?
After seeing one of Shota's videos, I'd say not. No, you never run out of ideas. There's always something that can be improved. I don't think you ever get to that stage. There's always maybe new technology as well. So maybe this is a good time to mention that O3 support for DJI is going to be in 6.0. Yeah, that's done. Right, on to the next topic. Henrik, VTOL. So Shota's working on VTOL at the moment. So there's plenty of scope and things that can still be put into INAV.
Oh, interesting. Well, definitely worth looking forward to in 2023. It could be a great year. There's going to be a lot of good stuff coming out next year. There's a lot. What I've kind of noticed also is a lot of stuff coming in inventory. Things that planes, for example, that were out of inventory for a very long period of time suddenly come back in inventory. A lot of most of your electronics are in good supply. It's a lot more expensive than it was before, but in pretty good supply. All right, before we get off INAV 6.0, any other thoughts?
Yeah, there's Caroline Tyler C 03 support. Yeah, let's take 2 minutes and talk about that. DJI 03 and Goggles 2 OSD support in INAV. Pavel didn't want to implement it. He did not. He said no, not interested. Most of the other core developers also had no interest in implementing it, but there was one developer now who decided, hey, I will do it. Okay. And what he actually did was he built a system that does it's similar like Ardu plane. It imitates to be a better flight to the DJI system, and then selects the icons from INAV that are available also for the Betaflight OSD to show the OSD. So you can use the menu, you can use the basic OSD items on screen, but everything that will be usable that has no symbol, for example, the efficiency milliamp hours per kilometer or so, things that aren't available in the Betaflight OSD will just shown as a question mark on the OSD. So you are aware of this item is not available.
This will be DJI OSD for some people.
It will be full of question marks.
Yeah.
So in general, a basic 03 Betaflight type OSD will work with 6.0, but as I said before, don't expect too much. It will be flyable, it will be usable, but the full experience, or it's not the full OSD experience you can have with INAV. And also we have to see what happens after the Betaflight 4.4 release, because they also do changes on the MSP DisplayPort protocol. They do changes on their OSD layout. So it might be that then INAV, the developer who made the workaround OSD, has to catch up with that if DJI does a follow-up update as well. So it's not a good solution, but at least DJI pilots with the 03 can use them with INAV with 6.0 for now.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thanks. That's a great update. And let's see, I think we are...
I don't think the Betaflight thing will be an issue, just to get that in there.
Okay.
Basically what they're doing is going to a 4-page font, but all 4 pages are basically the same with different color information. So as like for alerts, they start off with like a white for normal, and then possibly green, yellow, red as the condition changes. So if it just sticks to the first page, it's effectively the normal font anyway. So it shouldn't be a problem.
So, but then for INAV, of course, we will not have this color information.
It doesn't affect us with INAV. But I mean, potentially with INAV, we could go to a 4-page font too and have 2 different colors sections of font. So, for example, if your ESC gets hot, it would switch to page or whatever it's on, page 4, for example, which is a red ESC icon, a temperature icon. So it's potentially we could use that as well. But it's basically using the same method that we use to go from page 1 to page 2. And maybe for people who don't know, I should explain a little bit. So for on the fonts with Betaflight, there is 256 characters, and that is the single page. INAV can basically use up to 512 characters, which goes on to the second page of the font. So just going between those 2 pages, we have different sets of icons with INAV.
Sorry. Caroline Taylor RC also says Betaflight is getting HD OSD, I believe. Yes and no. As far as I know, Betaflight will support the. Second, why is my screen switch not working? Now it's working. Betaflight 4.4 will support the HD OSD grid size for systems like HD0 and Walksnail, but DJI just draws an old PAL-sized OSD grid, so they cannot go HD OSD on DJI if the goggles are not able to draw the coordinates. So don't expect that for now until DJI delivers an update to support that, actually.
And if they're doing that, they might as well just implement full MSP DisplayPort with font upload, and then everyone can use proper full OSDs. So,
yep.
Cool. All right. So, Henrik, it's been a half an hour now. We gave you a chance to wake up and drink your cola beer and
Cola beer.
Cola beer.
Diesel.
Cola beer.
And so, welcome to the glider half hour of Wingtalk. We're going to talk all about No, we're not going to talk about gliders. We're actually going to talk about one of our favorite vendors in the INAV community, which is Right Wing. You
can build a NanoDrag glider if you want.
You can. Oh yeah.
You can even build a mini drug or a drug glider if you want. So it just depends on wingspan.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So we're going to go over and kind of talk, bring people up to date. We've got good news and interesting news and all sorts of other news when it comes to this whole thing. To bring people back to the topic, about a year, it was October of 2001, I believe we had Chris Click on. And you know, it was at the time, up to this point, I was getting people who would message me and were like, I need to get a mini drac, and how can you make this happen in the UK? How can you make it happen in Australia? How can you make it happen in Germany? And I'm like, I don't really have much to do with it, but I decided to get Chris on the show and have talked to Chris about it. And essentially what he said was, you know, it's a hell of a lot of, the minimums, the cost of shipping is insane. The minimum orders are insane. And it's just way too much money right now. If we don't have the orders coming in, then there's really no way to pay for all this. So it was something where, you know, he kind of pushed back on the community. And a few months ago, one of the biggest proponents of Right Wing, which is our very own Henrik, got in contact with Chris and said, "Hey, I think I have a solution for you." And so we'll take it from there, Henrik. What happened?
Yeah, the thing is, I think it's an open secret that the drugs are molded in Germany. It's a BASF foam. It's an automotive foam you find behind the bumper cover of a Mercedes or BMW, something like that. And it's EPP, and they make it in a factory and put it in a rail car, and get that to the guys that actually mold stuff out of it. And to be let's say on a minimum level economically reasonable for Chris, he needed to have a considerably big production run, one that is big enough to fill a complete overseas container and get it over to Arizona, and there kit the stuff and send it out after it was, of course, bought by the community. And if you consider it, I mean, the European Union, or Europe in general, Europe and UK, are a pretty big market for Right Wing too. And there are quite a few planes over here on this side of the pond, and it's absolutely ridiculous when you think about it. Send it over the Atlantic just to send it back over the Atlantic again. So Chris was announcing let's say a pre-production or something like that in the Right Wing Nation a few months ago, and he was just dipping his toe into the water and see how many people wanted to buy something. And it turned out for this solution I just described, it wasn't enough. So yeah, he put the idea on hold again. And from then, the rest is history. We talked about it in the Right Wing Nation rather often, and rumors started around, and then somebody called somebody, and the other somebody called the other somebody, and all this developed a little. And then Björn, I don't know if you're online, Björn Kröschner, just called me and said, you should have a phone call with Chris. And I said, why me? Yeah, do it. You made the big group by the beginning of the year. You organized this and you organized that. Just call him. And yeah, turns out that Chris and I had a rather good connection, and the ideas are quite similar. And we decided to do it and actually do all the stuff out of my shed. So we'll be producing at the moment. The factory is producing the fuselages and the wings. They are molding them this week. And because of the material properties, they will have to cure them in a controlled environment for a few weeks after that. And we're expecting them ready to ship by end of January.
Wow.
So
let's slow the story down a little bit, because you kind of got ahead of it. Was an interest. It's kind of an interesting story where you're at, and I know it was weeks leading up. I mean, Chris was one of two guests that was on when we had the pandemic, and we had Tim from Ready Made RC, and I was mentioning, man, I always like to get my hands on, just try out a Strato Surfer, and he's like, and Darren was like, yeah, I'd like to get one of your goblins, and it was, we're talking about all these things, and at the time Tim was like, oh, I would love to get containers shipped, to my office. I would really like to have sales once again. This is really kind of sucking that we have some custom planes that we can't get. And then a couple months later, we had Chris on, and Chris was pretty much saying the same thing. Hey, the cost of shipping is insane right now, even if we could do it. Well, since that time, the cost of shipping has started to really creep down once again. And that's about one of the main things why you're starting to see more inventory show up. I got a text message from Tim about 4 months ago. I said, I got a Strato Surfer for you if you'd like one. I'll give it to you if you make a review on it. And I said, sure. And before the show today, I went out to the field and took it up for a second flight. And I love that thing. It's just a great plane. But what happened was, the first time I heard about this, Henrik, was I'm planning my trip to Arizona. I was going out to Mesa, Arizona, and out of the blue, I get a message from Chris Click and saying, hey, we're thinking about doing the mini tracks again. And I said, I'm coming out to Arizona. Let's meet up. And turns out where the field I was going to was about 2 miles from his location. And at the time, he was talking about it. And after I went to his place, I started to figure him out a little bit more. He's a guy that doesn't like debt. To some extent, he'll take it, but the nano drac was something that was, the mini drac was something that was a little too much. The numbers were a little too daunting, a little too scary, and he wasn't really sure they can do it. And, as Henrik said, his foot was in the water, but not exactly. He was testing it out, not sure. I said, let's have you on Wingtalk, and, the next thing I know, I started mentioning to Mark and Darren, like, hey, we might want to have Chris Click on Wingtalk, and and maybe have Henrik on as well. The next thing I know, Mark's like, okay, I already messaged Henrik, and I'm like, well, Chris hasn't agreed to this yet, but I guess the next morning after I left, Chris wakes up and he got a message from Henrik, hey, you're gonna be in Wingtalk today. So, and Chris was coming on and he's like, I guess we're doing this. So, Henrik, there was the big risk as far as, was there enough interest? Because at the time, what you just said was maybe there wasn't enough interest for the mini Drac. What does it look like now?
The thing is, due to the fact that my cost block is rather small, to be honest, there is none, factually. The only cost block is my wife, and she will be doing the packaging because she's a stay-at-home mom at the moment, and we just find the opportunity to do something different than your average part-time job. We found it pretty interesting. So she'll be doing the packaging and the accounting. I'll do just the shop stuff. The thing is, we can now simply order an X amount of planes and store it on my shed. And I found rather cheap, in a contrast to that what Chris had with the container stuff. I found rather cheap solutions to send batches of that to Chris, so that he can take care of the North American and South American market. And half of the production run will be sent out by me, for example, or more by my wife, honestly, by my shop. And it's pretty simple on the one hand. What is not so simple is the legal stuff in Germany, as you can imagine, the tax stuff, whatever, and everything else. I mean, the planes are not cheap. You certainly don't want to pay German VAT when you're in UK, for example. You certainly don't want to pay German VAT when you are in Australia, of course. And to get all that set up, you'll have to have a truckload of legal stuff. You have to do on your side here in Germany that we are allowed to deduct that kind of VAT. You have to have a certain legal construction around all this, and then you are allowed to do this. And that was, to be honest, a little more work than I expected. And with all the knowledge I have now, I probably wouldn't do it again, to be honest. But now I'm glad we did, and I'm working constantly on the shop. We'll be having accessories in the shop soon. I was planning to have them today, but the little one wanted a little more attention than planned. And we'll have accessories like hardware parts, all the lamb, motors, servos, etc. And
potentially radio transmitters.
Potentially radio transmitters if I find a good company to work together with.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard these days.
I know. I'll let you know if I find one.
Okay. I'll eventually even add some other vendors' planes I like into the shop. I was planning on an Aeronaut Aeromaster, which is more or less the same idea like the Bixler or the Easy Star, but it's a 2.5 meter wingspan composite model with wooden sandwich wings. And but the form factor is quite similar to Bixler and Easy Star, and but unfortunately they won't making them unless I sell at least 150 of them. Let's see how the mini drug project turns out, and then we'll talk about that. But you will get nano drugs from my shop too. We decided on nano drugs, and we decided on more or less the whole right-wing production line, except for the big drugs, because the big drugs will need an even bigger production run than the mini drugs, because they are not in one mold like the mini drugs. In the mini drugs you have a fuselage and the two wings in one mold. for the big trucks, we will have one mold for the big fuselage, one mold for the left wing, and one mold for the right wing, meaning that you have triple the amount of hand labor for molding one big truck, and to get that on an on a reasonable business platform, you'll have to have at least 500 to 700 planes, and let's be honest, the market is not big at the moment, not that big at the moment with our political environment. So bear with us a little. And,
okay. Well, it's kind of exciting because you started a hobby store right in the middle of
just
like a month ago.
Yeah.
Right. It's
just because I felt like.
Yeah, so. It's kind of. Well, at least you're not in it with like 5 other guys. It's just you and Chris, and you're just handling the hobby store yourself. So that sounds fantastic. And as I understand from your conversations with you, that there's been enough orders coming in right now where looks like it's going to be a very successful run.
Yeah, of course. They are quite legendary, as we all can agree about. And the planes fly really good, and they are the gold standard of foam planes regarding, let's say, stability and flight characteristics. Of course, the Chinese caught up a little in mold quality, and of course they caught up in price. But we are looking at a boutique plane, to be honest. It's not your everyday plane, and the production run that we have now done is more than 70% sold out already.
Jeez, that's fantastic! In 1 month, that's what I want to have you on.
We haven't even delivered the first plane, so yeah.
What's that?
We haven't even delivered a single plane yet.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah, I know. So that's where the rubber hits the road, and that's when your wife gets to spend the Christmas holidays, Valentine's Day, everything's just shipping.
Yeah. I just get her off my back.
You said you wanted a job. We got you one.
Yeah. Something like that. Yes. No. They are molding them right now. They are doing it. I don't know if it's this week or the week after. It's somewhere in this situation. But
I think Santa's elves are busy working on Christmas, but then maybe right after Christmas. Santa's elves will have a lot of time.
Maybe between the years, But the thing is, they need to cure in a controlled environment. So
that's a few weeks. So you're looking at the end of January possibly to get these shipped out.
Yes.
And maybe it might be a little bit backlogged. It might be Valentine's Day, like I said, with you and your wife working nights and weekends, because that's what it takes. I mean, that's a lot of work to get these orders fulfilled. So,
especially with the accessories, I do plan to implement printed parts into the shop, because it would be a logical extension of the product range. I asked Josh, who is in the chat. I don't think he wanted to come into the stream yet. If he is, come on.
Dinner.
He's going to dinner with his wife. Okay, yeah. Come in the chat. I asked Josh because let's face it, there's nobody who can beat Josh with 3D designs. At least not anybody that I know of. And we decided on the motor mounts first, and I asked him if he could do some noses and winglets and other parts. And as soon as they are in, they'll be in the shop too. I was, as I said, I was planning to implement them for tonight, but procrastination hits. and you'll be able to buy them directly together with your truck. And as soon as I have everything set up, all the guys who already ordered something will get a notification that you'll be able to add something to your order if you like. And so nobody will miss out on that opportunity.
All right, so your stuff's coming. Everything's good with the Right Wing Nation. Fantastic. We got a few minutes left here. Wanted to do our community service here and talk about stuff that we care about somewhat, which is there are some new releases that came out over the last few weeks here. One was ELRS 3.0, and then it was 3.01 because they had some bugs or issues with that, Darren?
I don't know. I don't use ELRS.
Well, I mean, the thing I was curious about was Mark one day broadcasts, puts out a post saying, hey, I'm going to be on a live stream tonight. You should come check me out. And then he's sitting there talking to a couple quad guys, or 3 quad guys, and they were like, why doesn't everyone just fly ELRS in INAV? And then Mark said, you can say, Mark, what you said. He's trying to. Your microphone's not on. Okay, now you are.
You can hear me now.
Barely.
Very quiet.
Oh, okay. Wait a second. I have some problems.
You're playing with your headphones and
Yeah. Wait a second. Now it should be better.
There you are.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, my USB here is loose, so it's switched the devices forth and back. Okay. Yeah. What exactly?
Yeah, but it wouldn't be Wingtalk without problems, audio problems of yours, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, always. Now, what did I say? I can't remember actually.
You said there were 3 crashes with the ELRS.
Oh
points.
yeah. We had ExpressLRS also has its problems. Let's say it that way. We had these 3 instances where people got fail-safes, and a few minutes after the fail-safe recovered, suddenly all the RC inputs were locked up completely. But that was, I think that were all 2-point-something versions of ExpressLRS.
It was before 3, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was before the 3 release. But yeah, it was actually interesting. But yeah, it was a cool call with these guys. One of them had some wing experience. The other ones basically were amazed about some things that are completely basic for us. Like when I talked about the navigation stuff, for example. I mean, Betaflight users don't know anything about waypoint missions, for example. But yeah, it was a cool talk with them. And we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, you had a good time there. One of the so hopefully a couple of the changes with ELRS 3.0 is now it does support LBT up to, I believe, 100 milliwatts or maybe 200 milliwatts.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I read
that was
some
one of the
comments.
things I saw.
I read some comments today regarding LBT on ExpressLRS, and the reaction of some of the people was, it's shit. Because that's exactly basically what Darren and I also said in the early ExpressLRS days. As soon as they go with LBT and with all the regulations and everything in theory in legal within legal borders, they will completely lose any benefit of their link stability and range and whatever they do right now. It only works that well because it runs outside of any legal boundary.
Being the Renegades. Well, I mean, the one thing I was curious about with the ELRS was that they're always talking about, was it 500 hertz as far as the ability. As I understand it, you can have one or two things happen. You can either go up for range or you can have low latency, but you can't have both. So and there's the guys who race quads. They want the low latency as low as possible, and they get it at the sacrifice of range.
I mean, yes, of course, you sacrifice your range for the latency. But to be honest, we have to admit they have used 2.4 gigahertz express LRS up to, I think, 15 or 20 kilometers on 250 hertz. So this is still impressive. With 500 hertz, I think they even still went over 10 kilometers on 2.4 gigahertz. So it is still impressive. But yeah, as I said, it has its downsides.
What's impressive is the Lord. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Jan's just posted the main reason for it in the chat. But ELRS is cheap. But yeah, to be honest, ELRS 3.0 is the first one where, if I was going to use it, that's the first one where it has most of what I'd want. But I still don't want to use it on my fixed wing because channel 5 is only two-way, and I use 4 positions on channel 5. So I don't want to change any of my models just to change RF systems. Makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I also say never touch a running system, and our systems work. So change it.
Yeah, I mean, I am tempted to try it on the quad purely because of the little tiny ceramic antennas. If another manufacturer came up with a tiny receiver with a little ceramic antenna that doesn't stick out of anywhere, then I wouldn't need to look elsewhere. So yeah,
when it starts with an F, yeah,
possibly, yeah.
Yeah, okay, possibly.
I have already put an email through.
Okay. Your contact got married last week, so he probably will get back to you next week.
Ah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations, Liang. Congratulations on your wedding. Okay, so yeah, so the other thing was that aside from ELRS, so congratulations to the ELRS guys for releasing 3.01. They got a few bugs to fix it in 3.01, and they're off and rolling on the next big update. Another big update was for the Edge TX guys, which is kind of took over for OpenTX, and they are up to believe it's 2.8 right now for Edge TX. Anyways, that one was I look at it. It looks nice. It supports a lot of the OpenTX radios, all the Free Sky, the Radio Masters, and everything else. Something else. It's looking lovely as long as it has the input mixer in there. It's not good for me. It's a non-starter. It's.
I have to be completely honest. The one thing I really don't like about Ethos is the inputs is missing. I love the inputs. It just separates it out nicely rather than having everything on the mixer page. The reason I don't like the new Edge TX is because it's made for people with fingers that are that fat. So on the mixer page, you've got about 4 entries, and it's just a waste of screen retail. Where other systems with touchscreens have about 8 still. So, but it's wide change of working system. I'm happy with OpenTX. But yeah, no, I love the inputs. I really, really don't like that they're missing with Ethos.
Well, that's the one thing that confuses a lot of people, those input mixers, because the people are like, where do you put it? Inputs or outputs? If you have a programming background, it all makes sense, but this is where you lose the average Joe. So, by the way, I wanted to say hello, a warm welcome to our long-lost friend, Luke, all the way from the airport, dropping his girlfriend off for the holidays. Hey, Luke, how's it going? He's a bit shy. Yeah, he's a bit shy today. He's tongue-tied. You got to turn off, unmute yourself, Luke.
Oh, no, he's not muted. The microphone's not working.
Yeah, true. By the way, right. Just in the meantime, while he works on that, I want to add one thing. I recently actually switched to Edge TX 2.8 because you talked about that earlier, Steve. I I have to say, I like HTX in general. I like that I can use the touchscreen, especially now in the winter, because in winter, the TX16S really, really has trouble with its buttons and especially with the scroll wheel. The scroll wheel, when I click it, constantly stucks when it's very cold outside. So it's nice to use the touchscreen instead, because there's nothing that can stay stuck. The problem with HTX still is, and this is so annoying, you either have to use it as it comes, the precompiled version as it is, but then with my modified TX16S with Bluetooth integrated and the R9 Access mod, for example, I cannot use it as it is. I have to compile it myself. And if you try to find documentation how to compile it yourself with the needed feature flags, it's a complete mess. And after I did that, the what was not working? The voice out things didn't work because I had no global variables, although they were activated during the compilation. It was a complete chaos. Luckily, there was one guy, one developer who basically enabled all the feature flags and precompiled firmwares for every single radio. So now I have features enabled I don't need, but at least I can use it as it is. So they really have to get their stuff together.
So what they really need is like a little page where you get to it by clicking a gear icon and little tick boxes for what you want.
So like OpenTX. Yeah, they still say they are working
and an
on
airplane
the cloud
icon too
build.
for your model. Yeah, that's awesome. I like that idea, Terry.
They say they are still working on the cloud build environment, but they say that since 2.6, like since a year now, and it's still not there. And that's the thing I really rate for. The only reason I use 2.8 now is because it works as it is, and I won't update until the cloud build system is ready.
Mark, you'll probably be able to answer this, because I haven't actually installed HTX on anything just because I'm happy with how mine works on OpenTX. But one of the things that work, using EFOS that I really, really like and would wish that it was in OpenTX is to have longer variable names. So for things like curves and logical switches, you can actually assign names. Is that something that's in EdgeTX yet, or is like curves still just 3 characters?
There are things where you have where they have longer names than OpenTX, but I'm not sure if that's for the variable stuff. I have to check that. Just ask me that later.
Yeah.
I say we got a guest.
Switch.
Somebody just showed up. Please introduce yourself.
Hello.
Hey,
/7 here, Jan from Germany. I'm a friend from Mark and Henrik also. And I built two mini drugs. The photos in Henrik's shop are from me. I hope the sound is loud and clear. I just stuck up some of my old webcam and stuff.
Sound is perfect.
Good.
Fantastic.
So here I am. I'm invited by Henrik. What do you want from me?
What we're going to need from you is to wait a couple minutes, because we're going to take a break and we'll be right back in about 3 minutes. So
Yeah, sounds
hold
good.
on, everybody. We'll be right back.
No problem.
Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Steve. Hey. I guess now that we have Jan here, we have everyone, all our entire audience is now joined us for Wingtalk. So, all two of you are on Wingtalk. Fantastic. Great to have you. Jan, so tell us about this. Why does Henrik have your planes and pictures of your planes in his shop, and how is all this working out?
Henrik started on Facebook a call for pictures, and I think I was the only guy sending him some, and so and then all my drugs are now in the shop.
Yeah.
So maybe you can show the shop pictures or the shop. I think at this point everybody has seen them.
Yeah. The thing is that I wish Elon would buy Facebook too, to be honest, because
oh yeah, that reminds us.
Henrik the band.
We got your name, a drunk uncle.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I put up a call in the Right Wing Nation and in the IFWG for shop pictures, because as I said a few minutes before, legal requirements are not that light-shouldered in Germany, and as soon as I take pictures from somebody for my shop, they'll sue me for whatever. And so I asked the guys, please send pretty pictures of your mini drugs so that I could use them in the shop. And if I choose them for the shop, you will get a discount on your drug order.
But did you say send nudes?
Yes, because I wanted pretty pictures, and
disassembled.
I had a smiley behind it. So context matters. Yeah, obviously not for Facebook. And there was somebody in the Right Wing Nation who didn't get the joke, and he reported me because I had sexual content in the Right Wing Nation.
Really?
And
I thought you were going to say he sent you an inappropriate picture.
No. Nobody sent me inappropriate pictures, and I didn't ask for them. Very, very certainly. But somebody is obviously just reading headlines, and reading headlines makes you dumb. And so because he's a dumb guy, he reported me, and Facebook said, okay, we'll be even dumber and just ban you for at least a week, and ban you from making posts for 60 days, and also get all the groups you're in to approve your posts individually. And you're a bad person, and we don't like you, and because you do not stick to the set of vocabulary we want everybody to use, and as soon as you use words that are bad, you'll be banned permanently. And apparently the word nude, that sounds like dude, is a bad word. Apparently Facebook is okay with war, with crime, with violence, and everything else. But as soon as somebody is making an innocent joke and somebody misunderstands that joke, you are the Antichrist. So here I am.
Oh, you also were in the right wing. Go ahead.
It's even more crazy if you think about that because Henrik was reported in another group. Now they force us in the INAV fixed-ring group to have his post all his posts approved, whatever he does. This is even more crazy.
It's not a bad idea. You think if you think about it, the post approval. For Henrik, yeah, some of the stuff probably needs to be like looked over before it's put up there.
Yeah, that's why.
The only reason why people don't approve your posts, Steve, is because they are all too long.
Too long, don't read.
I could translate them to German for you so you can read them. Or was it translate to Norwegian and then then you can translate it to German?
Yeah, of course.
That's okay. So before I forget, there's somebody. We gotta say hello to Luke now that Luke can say hi.
Yeah, now my audio is working. I'm actually here. Back from the airport. It's very rainy. Lots of aquaplaning. But yeah, here for.
Wait a minute. You're sending your girlfriend back home to?
Yeah, she's just going back for the holidays.
That's a sad Christmas. It's a blue Christmas without you. Christmas, baby, won't you please come home?
Well, last year we spent Christmas together, so this year we're spending it with our families.
This year you're spending it with your planes and all those planes you're supposed to build in your free time.
Yeah, just
all those
staying
things
here.
You've been talking about all year.
Shutting everyone out for Christmas. That's the Christmas spirit.
All those planes you promised to build.
It was terrible out there.
Yeah, it was.
I had to say, I was going up the motorway and the car aquaplaned. It kicked the cruise control out.
Yeah, I had the same thing quite a few times. It was terrible. Yeah, really need to replace my tires. I'm like right on the tread limit. I think that played a big part.
So we have a topic I wanted to ask you guys as far as we're going into this next year. We've had a situation where the planes we would recommend for people who's just getting started with INAV were pretty much out of stock, and if you could buy them, they're horribly expensive. So now we're starting to see things come back in stock and at more reasonable prices. I wouldn't say cheap. It used to be a few years ago this time of the year, you would be able to get all those planes that didn't sell over the summertime at 20 to 40% off. So you can stock up for your Christmas build. But now if someone is getting into the whole INAV spirit over the holidays, say someone like a young Luke, somebody who's like 22, going on 23 years of age, looking to build his first INAV plane, what would we recommend? Luke, I'm going to start with you.
I think it's got to be a Bixler or an Easy Star.
Okay, so you like the mid-fuselage pusher?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of the Easy Star and the Easy Star 2 and whatever, because in terms of fitting electronics in them, they're a bit limited. Everything has to be loaded in from the front, which can be a bit awkward. However, they're a really great flying plane, nice and simple. It's hard to overcomplicate them because, again, you can't put too much electronics in them. Very forgiving. Yeah, I think it's a solid plane. Yeah, and Mark stuffed loads in his, so maybe I'm just talking rubbish.
Yeah, I mean the Bixler when it comes. Wait, I'm unmuted. When it comes to flight behavior, it's absolutely a dream. Today I did my second maiden. The first maiden was a little bit chunky, got some damage because GPS failure and VTX failure and all the stuff at once. This, as I said before, this is my test platform and it's really packed. So I have a wait a second.
Plane flags.
Yeah, plane flags. Wait a second. I have to switch to.
Everyone go grab your planes.
Henrik, say something.
So, what?
Say something so the camera switches to you. Okay, that doesn't work right now because Luke is making too much noise. So
what is that? Is that an Easy Star? It's a multiplex.
Yeah, this is an Easy Star 2.
Easy Star 2.
I've got a couple of these. They're great for training.
So that's what he's going to build over the Christmas break while your girlfriend's gone.
No, this is already fully set up. No need to mess with it. Messing with it will only make it worse.
Okay.
So yeah, the Bixler 2, as I said, it's completely packed with electronics. You can see here at the bottom I have a rangefinder sensor. I have a GPS in the tail. I have a airspeed sensor here on the side. I have all the flaps wired up. I have my FPV port here, and if you look into it, if I can turn it around with these rings,
it looks like mine.
It's a rat's nest. It's completely
it is.
packed.
Yeah, there's no way around that.
The problem with that plane is you have to put in all the electronics before you glue the fuselage halves together. If you have glued it together, it's a pain in the butt to get everything in there. And that's why I also have this hole here in the bottom and the same hole with the same cover here in the tail, because I had to move the GPS to a different position. And that's the only way right now to access these hollow areas of the fuselage. And installing the rings with 2 servo cables and with the tubes of the plastic tubes for the pitot tube, it's really a nightmare to get them in without pushing them.
Do you have your pitot tube on the wing and then your sensor in the fuselage?
Yeah, exactly. The sensor is just dangling inside here.
Oh, I always mount the sensor like right behind the pitot.
Nah, I didn't see a reason for that, because the tubes are long enough, and if I mount it here, I just add more drag, so...
Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually tried like having a remote sensor. I mean, there's no reason why it wouldn't work. I've just, should probably give it a go at some point.
So it's permanently attached, then, is what you built that to be. It's the wings don't come off.
Yes, I can remove the rings if I remove the screws at the bottom, but then I also have to remove the servo cables from the flight controller, and that's really a nightmare. I could make connectors in the side, but then I also have to make for the pitot tube, for the tubes attachment points. It's too much work. I just keep it together, and that's it.
So okay. So for years now, I've been saying, "Oh my gosh, this Bixler is like the perfect INAV plane. This thing is just great to fly. It's so smooth, it's so stable." The thing about that plane is, if you cut the power, let's say you lose control, like I've had it happen a couple times, the plane comes down, it just lands by itself in one piece.
If the CG is right, pretty much yes. Yeah.
It's beautiful. But everyone thought it was crazy. Why are you spending so much effort on a trainer when there's so much better planes out there? And I'm like, these things just fly amazing. You get them, and if you get them light enough, they get very floaty, and they're just a lot of fun to just take up and fly around. And it's always a really nice experience. The Stratosurfer is they're the same size plane, but it's a completely different flying experience. I mean, not much in common with the Bixler 2. And then the Bixler 3, to Luke's point, was that the Bixler, there wasn't enough room. The Bixler 3 has a ton of space inside for putting all your gear inside. So that's a really good INAV plane, as long as you take the wheels off and just make it a glider.
Yeah, I think the Bixler 3, you can also access the fuselage area from the top right when you remove the wings. That's the problem here, because it's completely covered as the wings are slotted into the sides. Yo-Yo4 is asking in the chat, did you use the rangefinder for your auto landing video, and do you use static tube for the pitot tube, or do you use the static pressure from within the cabin? I use the static pressure from the pitot tube itself at the first point, and yes, that's why the rangefinder is in there for the auto land testing. And this is basically my INAV development main test platform. And the reason why I used that Bixler was, first of all, I got it for free because it was a leftover from a former coworker who moved to South Germany, and he doesn't fly anymore, so he left it here. And the second point is, because it is so easy to fly and so self-stable, it's much easier to land this thing if something goes wrong with INAV than like a AR900 or so.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so Darren, the question goes over to you. We're going to go down the line here. What do you think is like the ultimate first plane for somebody getting into INAV in 2023?
To be honest, I probably haven't flown one. I mean, I was flying line of sight before INAV, so I was already sort of flying. My first was still the S800. Having flown the AR wing or the AR Classic, I guess now that would probably be a better plane for a beginner than the S800, even though the S800 is tougher. But yeah, I mean, I'm making up one of these things now.
An AR Pro, look at this.
These crash a lot. Well, so launcher not, sorry.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean,
So
I would agree with the rest of the guys. If you've not flown before, then a traditional, something like a Bixler, Easy Star, something like that would be ideal for the first INAV plane.
All right, so I guess Jan, what do you think is an ideal first plane for somebody getting into INAV fixed wing for the first time in 2023?
Jan, you're muted.
He's saying something very important.
Jan?
I hope we can read lips. No. Jan, you're on mute. Okay. We'll get back to Jan in a second. Henrik, what do you think is the ideal first plane for INAV?
That's a good question. I, of course, have to say now a mini drug with boom kit and extended wings.
Yeah.
I have to say that at the moment.
I think I would still go with the AR900 or AR. Okay.
There we go. Now you're on.
Now you're on. Okay, I'll just finish first. They are, of course, fantastic planes, but
Test.
For your first plane, I'd still go with something that has a traditional rudder setup, and I have the Easy Star on my shoulder right now, and those planes are made for learning line of sight flying, so they are completely stable without any flight controller. So the thing I often see when you have somebody getting into fixed wing FPV, they come from quads and don't know how to fly a plane or don't know how to set up a plane mechanically, and these planes are just a breeze to work on and set them up mechanically because they're so forgiving. You can basically get off the sticks and they land themselves, as we just agreed on. And the Easy Star is one thing. There is also another plane from Multiplex I really like. It's the Twin Star, which is basically a twin engine with high wing setup, and it's evenly easy to fly. But all these planes have the downside. They are very cramped inside, as Mark pointed out.
Right.
And I just had the idea to make a tray with two halves. One half will stay in the plane, and the other half will be with the electronics on. And there are plugs that are similar to multiplex plugs with six contacts in. They're called JX9 or JX12. They have two big plugs and 9 or 12 small ones. And so you can basically install all your electronics on the tray, and you pull the whole tray out, and you can plug it in with one plug. So easily interchangeable. And then you should be able to work on all your stuff and pull it out easily.
Perfect. All right. So Jan, question to you. What is the plane you would have people start off with if they're new to flying fixed wing INAV in 2023? Jan? Wait a minute. Does he hear us? Jan, hello?
I think he doesn't hear us.
Does he, Mark, tell me he's on.
Yeah, I still would go with the AR900 or AR Classic. Is it still not working?
Well, it's working.
Now it's working.
Oh, damn it. I can hear you, but...
Okay, yeah, I think he has a lot of delay for some reason.
The delay is because he's watching the YouTube stream and not the Skype stream.
Okay.
He has to switch to Skype and mute the YouTube
about
stream.
30 seconds behind. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why you were talking.
Okay. Yeah, then Henrik, maybe you can text him that, and then I jump in at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So my idea for 2023 planes. You all know I love the Yeah, okay. You all know I love the AR Pro.
Könnt ihr mich jetzt hören?
As a ring, yes. We hear you.
We could hear you all the time.
Yeah.
Könnt ihr mich hören?
Okay, let's drop him another message.
I would go with this one. Spec wing, no electronics at all. Just set it up, learn to fly. You can do it line of sight. It's cheap.
I like that.
I cannot hear anything.
Oh, cool. All right. Yeah, he's listening to the wrong thing. Mark, can we mute him for the time being? So, yeah, we got it. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, just a moment. Okay. So
as you were saying,
my plans for 2023. As I said, I love the AR Pro. Everyone knows that. But for a beginner, of course, it's not the ideal plane, as you have to learn how to launch data ring first. Right now, from everything that's on the market, I really like the Swordfish, the Atom RC Swordfish. I've just seen the reviews. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get one yet. But when I see how it flies from Painless 360 and other reviews as well, it flies so well, even in windy conditions. It's easy to launch. It has a good wingspan, a good size. It has room inside, and it even comes with a completely pre-installed INAV system out of box if you want to have that. So this is something I can really recommend even for a beginner. And because of that twin motor, you have small motors, you have small propellers. It's cheap to get replacement parts. You can just buy cheap quad motors, for example, if you burn out something. And it has a lot of thrust, so it's easy to launch, easy to climb, hard to stall. Yeah, so I would say right now the Swordfish would be a recommended beginner plane from my perspective.
Okay, Swordfish. So aren't you concerned at all about the quality of the plastic on the Swordfish? Snapping?
I cannot really judge that without seeing the plane myself. I have not seen any crash landings yet in reviews, so I cannot tell how hard it was and how it did. So yeah, nothing I can judge.
We haven't seen, like, as I recall from over the last year, it seemed like the He-Wing Ranger has suffered a lot of bad crashes, but the ones that seem to do pretty well, like the Atom RC Dolphin, seem to hold up pretty well even after crashes.
Yeah, I think the Dolphin can withstand pretty hard landings. It also uses pretty good foam. I think it's similar like the stuff that Sonic Model uses, as at least what I felt when I had a Dolphin in my hand. But it's similar for a beginner. Maybe it's very aggressive on the roll axis, especially. So launching for a beginner can be tricky. But yeah, INAV auto launch, of course, helps a lot here. And when it's flying, I think it's also very stable and especially very stall stable from what I've seen. I just flew one once that was in Meppen this summer. But yeah, it's hard to tell because I know that was it this year? I think it was this year in Meppen when I flew it. But yeah, it was with a flight controller, with auto launch. I didn't had much time with it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I made my friend's one, and the biggest problem I found was the amount of thrust. Other than that, it went up straight away, no problem at all. Very, very low stall speed. So yeah, I think if you can get it in the air, it's absolutely fine. And Papa Noob has mentioned that CG is critical, but it's a forward swept wing. We should be double checking CG with everything anyway, no matter what it is. And on the dots, it was absolutely fine. So, yeah, I mean, the only weak parts my friend found was down the side where they've got a seam. He did was quite a heavy crash at about sort of 78 miles an hour.
Wow.
And the battery actually went through the side where the glue hadn't been quite put on properly, but it was back in the air the next day. So it is quite resilient.
Okay, yeah. So they did make some good planes, and they also had the what was the what was the other one, the twin plane that they had, Adam RC?
T1 Ranger.
Adam RC.
Oh, Killer Whale.
Killer Whale, right.
Then they had the tiny, I'm getting...
Right. Henrik, say something. What is... Henrik has a glider in his hands, looks like.
Sleep time.
Yeah, small little glider.
It's sleep time, so that's why I bring up the boring stuff, you know.
Fantastic. All right, so well, we got a few minutes left here. I'd say we got more than a few minutes. I wanted to kind of talk about the INAV fixed wing group for a moment, and actually kind of where INAV has come since we started the group in 2018. So how do you think this is working out? As far as the way I remember it, INAV was a derivative of, it was kind of like a smarter version of Betaflight with a GPS when we first started. And by the way, it also works with fixed wing, and it doesn't work super well, but some people can make it work. And that was kind of the whole crux of the group. What do you guys remember? Mark and Darren were with us just kind of like at the very beginning. So I think Mark and Darren both joined the group after within the month of starting. So
yeah. I think I joined around the 19th, so it was about a week after the group started, something like that, maybe a couple of days. It was quite...
We started on the 18th, so you were like the next day.
Next day then.
Yeah, wow, you're on it. That's pretty good.
I have to look when I actually entered. I think when I entered, the group was already about two months old or so.
Okay, that sounds about right. So I mean, the as I recall, we were on INAV 2.0. 2.1 was just released. We had the beta 2.1. I remember I'm saying, hey, we have INAV 2.1. It was just released, and someone said, no, it's a release candidate. So what do you remember? I mean, you think about INAV 2.1, wasn't that kind of like a really, it was like kind of a scary time to fly INAV, if you think about it?
No, I started with 1.8, I think was the first one. So I've been flying INAV for a little bit. But to be honest, I can't really remember too much. I'm terrible for stuff like this. I only retain certain information.
I think for me, the first flash of a flight controller at all with INAV was 1.8 or 1.9 as well. I think it was basically the version where the feed forward for fixed wing was introduced, when fixed wing started running only on PID controllers. That was my first INAV version, and from there on, yeah, I just started and went with it. I wouldn't say it was tricky back then. Of course, I had no idea how everything works, so it's hard to judge nowadays with everything I know about it now. When thinking back about the features back then, because I don't know, was it really that complicated or hard to use back then, or was I just too dumb to use it when something went wrong?
Yeah, it's probably
hard to tell today.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of truth in that. It's just we know what we're doing now. If anyone's coming into 5.1, it's probably, still quite daunting for them, even though configurator is much better now.
I mean, imagine when someone today comes in and builds his first INAV plane with 5.1, for example. We have much better documentation today than we had back then. We have better video tutorials. We have more channels covering this topic, INAV on fixed ring. And when you see how much trouble people still have today with INAV, and then we think of everything that just came over the last 2 years or so in features to make the entry and the tuning stuff easier.
Yeah.
Maybe that's either people get more lazy nowadays and they just don't want to read into it and they rather ask questions, or back then we were more clever to figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah, but just remember those old days. I mean, I joined INAV with 1 point something, maybe even with a similar version you just mentioned. But you had to read a lot, really. It was really a tough read. And today, if I compare that to those old days, I mean, it's just 3 years or less. And INAV does not crash your plane anymore.
Right.
So we don't have horizon drift. Even in 5.1, we don't really have horizon drift with the midgetations. And with the advent of INAV 6, there won't be any horizon drift anymore. And so INAV does not crash your plane. If you now crash your plane, and you cannot blame it on INAV anymore. So if your plane doesn't fly on INAV, you simply suck at building planes. That's it.
Actually, today INAV crashed my plane today, but it was not INAV's fault.
And then Mark, you know the answer.
It was also my fault, of course. Just from today, I smashed the 3D printed Helix plane I showed in the last. I think I showed it in the last stream. It's basically 1,000 pieces now. The reason was the flight controller locked up completely. It just froze OSD. Nothing was moving anymore. I had no input. Nothing was working, and the plane was smashing into the ground, basically nose first at 100 kilometers per hour. But I think the reason was just a bad voltage regulator on the flight controller combined with a lot of noise from the ESC. The OSD was also flickering. And by the way, this is also a very important heads up to everyone watching and also to everyone being new to fixed rings and INAVs. If you have excessive noise in your video feed or OSD, do not fly the plane. Don't do it. You will kill your regulators, you will kill your flight controller, or you will kill your plane with that. If you have a lot of noise, that means you have very high and low voltage fluctuations on the power rails. This kills your regulators, they overheat, and at some point the flight controller will just give up. And that's basically what happened today. The only reason why I did it is because I wanted to have the feedback to the developer. I want to see how it flies. I was not planning to fly it anymore after that today, but unfortunately it was only one. It survived only one battery and 3 flights in total. Just keep that in mind. If you have video noise or OSD flickering, stop flying, fix the issues.
Doesn't really have to be noise in the video. Because
it's an indicator, at least.
It's an indicator, yes, yeah. Of course. But you can have noise without seeing it in the video, and that's what happened to me. That's what I expected, or why I thought there is something in INAV, hidden in INAV, with BL Heli 32 or similar ESCs that is killing your ESC. And it turned out it wasn't. It was noise on the ESC signal line, which is absolutely comparable with noise on the video line. Just solder a cap on the power pads of your ESC.
I had, by the way, I have soldered a cap on it. It didn't solve the problem.
Then you can never have too many caps. So. And the other thing is that I found out was that it is very, very beneficial when you take your ESC signal line and get it out of the parallel way for the power lines for the ESC. So don't run them in parallel. Get it a little away. Maybe even use a little tin aluminum foil or something and shield it a little. It helps. It really helps. And the next thing I wanted to do is experiment with twisted pair shielded cables, really from so cut 5 cables or something, network cables, so that we can even shield the noise better, because it basically killed 3 of my ESCs and 1 motor. And from Björn, for example, we just mentioned him in the last hour of the stream. He killed a complete flight controller, and you may have killed your flight controller too. I don't know. Have you checked it, Mark?
The
flight controller of the plane you crashed today. Have you checked it after the crash? It's still working?
Not yet. It is still working. I think after the crash, it seems to have rebooted, because I got back to the telemetry.
Yeah.
But I have not checked it yet. I just threw everything in my car because I didn't have it back with me, and I will get it tomorrow and see if anything works. Yeah, and that's it was an old F411 ring that was already known for bad video filtering and a lot of video noise. Anyway, and even it was before in my AR900 speed setup with the ARB. And on that one, I also had video noise on it. It has survived some crashes in the back, maybe in the past. Maybe that already caused some premature damage on it or whatever. The interesting thing is also if you get video noise or not. It's very, very different where the noise comes from or where the noise goes into the video feed. For example, if you have ESC noise and you have a flight controller with a separate voltage regulator for your camera and VTX, it's often that in this case the power lines to the VTX and camera are completely clean, because they run through a separate regulator that has its own caps, that's filtered and all that stuff. So the power should be clean. Then often the signal gets disturbed from on the way from the camera to the flight controller, or from the flight controller to the VTX, that you get EMF signals into the video signal line. If you have a flight controller like the F411 WSE or F411 Wing, I think also the WTE, then you have VBAT output for the VTX. In this, and sometimes even for the camera. In this case, it can also be that the VBAT is not filtered enough, so you get the noise feed into the power line of the camera, and the noise actually is generated inside the FPV camera or inside the VTX, not induced into the line, into the video line itself. So it can have different sources, and this all has to be taken into account if you want to eliminate that.
So I would like to switch gears here and ask about one thing that is kind of on the topic we're on right now, which is we're getting like newer pilots and newer people coming into the group, and what are the common mistakes we keep seeing even in 2022 as to we see from newer pilots, you know, starting out with INAV. What are the things that people fail with? Thank you, drunk uncle. I did wake up. Yes, thank you. What are the most common mistakes we see with new pilots with INAV? And so Mark, I'm sure, has a few opinions on this.
Oh, you just threw me in the cold water. Common mistakes with INAV.
We can get back to you.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Pre-flight checks, missed pre-flight checks, servos in the wrong direction, board orientation in the wrong direction, so servos are checked with the radio but not in angle mode, for example. I think these are still common mistakes that can happen. some other things are for first-time setups. People asking for control surface throws. They say, I don't have very much throw on my control surfaces. What they do, they check it in acro mode, for example, or even in angle mode. People asking, hey, I only get very little elevator movement in angle mode. This is completely normal. And sometimes it's hard to explain to people if you are in acro mode and you get very little deflection on the control surfaces before your maiden, before the auto tune, why they should raise, for example, the feed forward, or why they should raise the roll rate or pitch rate, for example. Because the rates and the feed forward play together, and as a result, they create the servo output. Yeah, these are still mostly the most common mistakes I could know of right now. Yeah, that still happen with INAV.
Well, Darren, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's probably summed it up, to be honest. Barn door control surfaces. Yes, setting up something like the Dolphin or an AR wing with 3D plane control surface movement just doesn't need it. But to be fair, the manufacturers are pretty crap with putting that information in the manuals. They really should have a base level of, beginner, intermediate, and advanced level. But you go to any traditional line of sight plane, they have throws, even Expo, listed in the manuals. Most FPV planes don't, or if they do, chances are they've not really tried them out. Which they should do, because they're testing these planes, so they know how they fly. They should put them through a range of different control surface movements and say, right, if you're a beginner, have 12 millimeters on the ailerons and 14 millimeters on the elevator, whatever it is.
Darren, that is right there. You've landed on the right answer. They don't test the planes. They build a mold for them. They put the foam in it and they put them in a box to sell them. There is no testing phase. They don't know what the throw should be.
Well, by the way, they say they test them.
By the way, Darren,
test them. They should have this information.
Darren, you also just made a beginner mistake yourself, because actually, if you do it right, then you do not give the control surface deflection in millimeters. You give it in degrees. Because a very good it's still
you can't put inclinator on a foam plane.
Of course you can.
And
you just use these angle measurement triangles you use in school, put it on the side, and then you look how high it goes. That's it.
But there's nothing with millimeters. It still works. It's Pythagoras.
Yeah, I mean, if you give it for one specific plane, yes, but in general you can still figure it out yourself if you get the plane, because a good rule of thumb is just start with 30 degrees maximum.
Yeah, you know that.
Okay, yeah.
Experienced plane builders know that, but the general quad guy who thinks his motor and FC setup is the most important thing on his plane, fuck servos, because a servo is a servo, right? Fuck linkages, because you probably have to connect your servo to the control surface somehow, but there are all those funny holes and I don't know what. There is absolutely no information in Chinese foam planes on that. That's
true.
a fact.
Yeah.
And I tend to agree with Darren. They don't really test them thoroughly. And if you really have a look at traditional LOS planes, unfortunately, Robbe and Grabner disappeared, and everything you find from them now is some sort of rebranded Chinese stuff. But on the multiplex, for example, you always find the throws, and you find them in millimeters, because that's the most easy, the most accessible measurement. Of course, you can have some kind of degree meter. You can even buy them at Helline or print them yourself. But the easiest way to do it is just by measuring it in millimeters. And millimeters.
You can also measure get a degree meter, or like I said, these Geodreieck, we call it in German.
Just print one. There are tons of it on Thingiverse.
You print one
to clamp on your wing and just read out the degrees.
Yeah, I mean, just for an example.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say it just seems to be the Chinese phone companies that do it.
They don't do it.
Yeah, sorry, but don't do it. I recently sold Luke a nitro plane, which is Black Horse Hobby, which is a Chinese company. In their manual, they have the control surface throw.
They had everything in that manual.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sonic Model and ZOHD also mentioned the control surface throw, but a lot of others don't.
Test. They were completely wrong.
No, they are not wrong. I asked them in the past. They say these are recommendations, not the maximum. They are recommendations.
Yeah, but you couldn't even hit them on the Talon 250G. With their servo linkages, you couldn't hit the VTEL recommended throws in the manual. You couldn't even get to them. And I emailed them and they said they're just a guess. They sent me that back in an email.
I think the one you got, you had the control linkage on the 250G in the outer hole, I think. You had a different production line.
Way in, and it still wouldn't get the 12 millimeters of throw they recommended for the
I mean on the servo side. On the servo side, if you look at mine, there are two different production batches.
Not the Dart, the Talon.
Ah, the Talon. Okay.
I thought the Dart was fine. The Dart was absolutely fine. But the Talon 250G, the VTEL, just can't reach the throws that are in the manual.
Mine does. It's interesting. But yeah, just one thing I want to add here. I just came over that because of that test flight with the 3D printed Helix. Just as a reference, if you use the Talon 250G as an example, it's a little bit smaller than the Helix, of course, but it's just for demonstration. If I use 12 millimeter control surface movement on that one, it doesn't look much, but if you look at that angle, that's already close to the 30 degrees that are rule of thumb to be hit. On, I think 12 millimeters is the recommended throw on the Dart 250G.
Yeah, I mean, that's plenty for that.
That's plenty on that one. On the Helix, on the other hand, I set up a mixer for 15 millimeters control surface deflection. But what I didn't take into account is that the control surfaces are basically a quarter or a third of the whole ring length. They are like this. And if you go 15 millimeters there, this is nothing. I ended up with a roll rate of maybe 180 degrees per second or so. So I had to completely redo the mixer and the servo throws to get a proper roll rate. And I ended up now at 340 today when I did the auto tune. But this can make a big difference, and that's why I usually always go for the degrees in deflection. 30 degrees as a starting point is usually a good one. That's also why I fly with 70% expo by default when I made in a plane. And then I go from there, and then I can still reduce or raise it if needed.
But what you also don't find is control surface differentiation. Meaning that if you have an elevon and you are inducing roll, there is one elevon pointing up and one elevon is pointing down. And we all know what the elevons do. They are ailerons and elevators at the same time. So when one is pointing down, it's depending on the airframe, of course, but most of the planes with elevons then tend to pitch down also. So that's why, for example, in the Funjet manual, you have throws for roll that differ in upwards and downwards movement. In simple words, if you are giving 100% roll input, your one aileron is going 50 or 20 millimeters up, and the other one is just going 10 millimeters down, so that you don't have this induced pitch down movement. Andreas Kanzler wrote a program for that for his Funjet like 12 or 18 months ago with logic conditions, which is pretty interesting, so that you have the full pitch movement, but as soon as you induce roll, you have different throws, so that the nose of the Funjet doesn't pitch down in barrel rolls or something. That's pretty interesting, and you don't find that information on any Elevon plane you find from Banggood or AliExpress, for example.
You can set up in the mixer in INAV as well. You can actually separate stabilized roll plus and minus. So you can have a different weight. So you don't need to use logic. You can just do it in the mixer to have differentials.
Maybe you couldn't do it then when he did it.
Maybe it's been in there at least a year.
Yeah, more than a year. It was more than a year ago.
But I think there wasn't a change in the mixer. I also thought about that, doing it in the mixer. But the problem is with the mixer, you cannot change the center point of the servo for the mix itself. You can only change the center point for the servo itself on the outputs, but that would affect roll and pitch. I think that's the problem.
Your center point's going to be the same for roll and pitch. When it's centered, it's centered. That's just trim.
Yeah, but if you want to have different deflections up and down, you in the mixer you can only reduce the overall throw, but that is for both directions. The endpoints you can also only change in the output stop, but then this is for both axes.
Yeah. You don't need to change the endpoints at all. So all you do on the roll is for pitch up. Or the pitch plus or positive, roll positive, you would have, say, 50%. And on the roll negative, you'd maybe have 30% on the weight.
Yeah, so but that you have then to switch with the that's what Andreas did with the logic conditions, because you have you have one roll mix on the left servo and one roll mix on the right servo. But you have to have different mixes for up or for down movement. That's why you use the logic conditions. We can look at that later.
Yeah. Okay. Bring it all back here. Here we go. Jan, is there anything that any common mistakes you see people make with INAV?
I'm still muted. I think the most important part is that you have flying buddies that show you the little details in setting up your wing, in the mechanics, and then setting up INAV, whatever. And I think I went through all the mistakes that were mentioned. And since I started to watch Darren's videos, Mark's videos, and all the other very good YouTuber videos with all those step-by-step setup guides I followed, I learned. Since then, I have never crashed again.
Wow. All right. That's good. You listen to Mark Hoffman and Darren, you will never crash again. That's the most important
thing. Yeah.
And if Mark's crashing, it's because he's not listening to Darren enough.
Or I forgot unit conversions.
Yeah, I was about to say, apart from when Darren and Mark don't agree, and then you don't know who to follow.
Mark doesn't listen to his crashy sense. He just sends it, and then what happens?
He crashes.
That sounds fantastic. The one thing I see,
Mark disagrees with anybody. I have never heard of that.
Doesn't happen.
One common mistake I see, kind of happening again and again in the group, is that people make their first INAV plane their dream INAV plane, and it's something that is like, I'm trying to debate right now between Walksnail and DJI, and I'm going to put it into this really elaborate plane, and it's going to be a beautiful first build. And this is more like your fourth or fifth build, but they're doing it in the first build. The first build's kind of like your high school girlfriend. There's a reason you don't talk to her at the 10-year reunion, because, I mean, a lot of bad times happened. Your first build is going to be crashed at least a few times. And so it really should be something that is more resilient, I think. And it really should allow yourself the opportunity to fail and, learn from your mistakes. And if you put too much time and effort and money into something that crashes, I'm kind of worried that people won't come back and they have a bad experience at INAV. So that's kind of the one thing I would suggest is make it something that, you know, if something doesn't work out, you go back to the drawing board, you fix it. By the second or third plane, your plane should be something that you can put more money into because they'll be around longer.
I have one more thing to add to beginner suggestions, and I think this is also a very important one. Get second opinions. Even if you are happy with your new build, if you are happy with your first build, you fly it, it flies, you can launch, you can land, everything is fine. But still, take the DVR, upload it to YouTube, upload it to Facebook. We are a big community. Get second opinions. Often there are things you don't see, especially if you don't have the experience. Other people can point you at just to fix them. Or at least rewatch, for example, your DVRs after your first flights, after your maiden flights. Watch it over and over again. Just look how the plane actually behaves. This is really, really helpful to recap your flights. And get just a second opinion from someone else to show you something you might not have noticed before. This can save you a lot of trouble in the future and especially prevent bad habits to develop.
Okay, that's good advice there. Anything else to add to that? Any other final thoughts? I think I've kind of noticed that when we ramble on for an extra half an hour that people can start logging off after about 5 to 10 minutes of us rambling on, much past 2.
We can't go yet. Leslie's only just turned up. Slacker.
Fantastic. All right, so we got a few minutes left before we hit the hour mark. Is there anything that we have to look forward to, or do you have any? What builds are we working on here for coming up? Is there anything that you're working on over the winter time so that you have ready for next summer?
I'm working on a Turbo Timber Evolution INAV build as a stall plane, kind of like a smaller version of Josh Galt's Cub. I did actually end up getting for a work project, the E-Flight Cessna 150, which is kind of the same sort of size, a 2.1 meter wingspan plane. But I've decided not to put INAV in that purely because it's too big to have at my house. It is extremely inconvenient. The box, I can barely get it through my doorway. The plane just won't go anywhere. So I'm building out the Turbo Timber Revolution as a bit more of a reasonably sized plane.
It was what, 2.1 meters?
That's the Cessna 150 is
right.
2.1
It flies
meters.
Great though. I've seen it fly.
Flies. Yeah, it flies amazing. In fact, I fly full size as well, and it's the closest flying plane to a full size plane I've flown. I don't think it's just because of the size. It really has really good flight characteristics. But yeah, it doesn't bite at all. Really impressed with it, but it's just too inconvenient. It's too big. It doesn't fit anywhere in my room, in my workshop. So I'm building out the Turbo Timber Revolution instead.
If you live in the United States, HSD jets, so they're known for making styrofoam jets and things like that, turbine jets. They make the Cessna 180. So it's HSD jets, Cessna, they just call it the, I think it's HSD 180. So it's a replica of a 180. It's a 2-meter wingspan. It's about $200 less than what you get from Horizon Hobby. And it's essentially a very similar plane. It's about $350 without shipping, another $50 to ship it.
I see. Yeah.
Kind of a cool plane. Okay. Yeah. Mark, what are you working on?
I actually have finished 2 winter projects. One I have to redo because the Helix crashed. But I had a good use of my 2 weeks holidays. The Bixler is pretty much finished. I have to replace the VTX now. It did fade today again. I will reprint the Helix with the updated version as soon as that is ready. And then I will see. I might disassemble the drift because it's right now has a broken ring anyway, and I need some parts, and I have too many planes. And after that, we will see. Someone in the chat already mentioned he is setting up Rocksnake on 3 existing builds. And yes, I also wait for my RIA-X to arrive and then slowly convert a few planes to digital.
Darren, you gotta say something for us to see what you're looking at.
Well, this is what I'll be building. Well, hopefully not over winter. Hopefully very quickly, because I need to test it. But yeah, it fits in here like a charm.
You need to crash it, you mean?
Yeah, I ideally need to get it at least one flight so I can test out the code. But yeah, I'm not hoping for much because the reputation of this thing.
Okay. All right. So that's what you're working on, Henrik. What do you? Oh, you don't have any time, right, Henrik?
I have enough time. The question is what project I'm not working on. That's more or less the question.
Build for fun.
Did your number go up or down in the meantime?
Up, of course.
Oh, okay. So 13, 14 now?
No, I think it's the number is somewhere in the 20s. I'm at the moment I'm working on an 8S 5P 21700 battery, so 40 cells for the big truck, which would be a power cruiser. And I just had a few servos bought, and I'm just tinkering around with it.
They're Tower Pros.
Sorry?
They're Tower Pros.
No, not that one. not really. And I'm pretty occupied with my Ventus. It's a 5-meter Ventus with a retractable EDF in it, and that's full carbon fiber. And that eats all the free time that I have when I am not working on the web shop or in my new job. So it's quite the bigger brother of this one here, which is an ASW, by the way.
Is that Volantex?
No, not really. That's just an ASW 24, for example. And this one will be probably an INAV ship too. Won't become scale because I shot it rather cheap for less than $200. It has 4-meter wingspan and will get a propeller on the back and have some camera equipment in the cockpit area, not a scale cockpit, and maybe even Josh made a really cool dome cam for one of his twin ships, and actually this one already has a motor cutout at the nose, and this dome cam will fit right in it. So maybe I'll do something like that.
Jan, what are you going to work on this winter? One big project.
Right now, I'm on the HD0 conversion of 1 or 2 wings. So I'm not going the walk snail or DJI way. I hate goggles that scent. And to be honest, I'm waiting on the mini truck, Henrik.
Yeah.
I have a nice motor for that waiting. KO Method X. 1500 kV, and I think on 6S it's gonna rip.
Little 6x4.
No real new build right now, just optimizing all the stuff that's lying around. Do some improvements here, do some there. That's it for this winter.
Sounds good. I will say that what happened with me was I had 2 AR wings that fell victim. One was going back probably 3 years ago when we had the FR Sky INAV lockout. What would happen is we went to failsafe, and there was a problem with timing, and what would happen is half of the channels would come back as 0, and the plane would disarm as you're coming out of failsafe. And on return to home, all of a sudden the plane would just disarm and crash into the ground. So I lost one wing on an AR wing. It took off right where the winglet was. And then about a year later, I had the issue where we had in INAV was, who was it? It was the values would reset. It was LPZ value would reset, and you would fix that. It would say it would be out of range, but it didn't show that 2 other values were out of range. And I was getting these, the artificial horizon was going vertically. And because of that, one of my planes landed right on Route 66 in front of McDonald's right there in Glendora, California. And what I did is I had it got ran over by cars by about probably 100, 150 cars, but one wing was still good. And it happened to be the wing that was from the other plane that I needed. And I made a Frankenstein plane. I had 2 AR wings I could put together and somewhat of a fuselage. And I got it flying, and I put in some like old gear and I said, this thing actually flies okay, not decent. And I would land it, and I'd pick it up, and the thing would be all rickety. And I said, when I saw they went on sale again, the foam, I said, all right, I'm just going to order the foam and rebuild this thing properly. So that's what I'm working on and updating that. So I'll have a really nice functioning AR wing. And then also about a month ago, the killer whale went on sale, and it was dropped at Banggood to a price that was obscenely low. So low I wouldn't believe that they were actually selling it. It was for the PMP kit. And I was like, maybe I should get this, maybe I shouldn't. I'm like, nah, I'll get it. And what ended up happening was as soon as I bought it, I looked again, and it was like over $200 on the next one. So I don't know how I lucked out, but I got that, and I'm going to build that over the winter, and probably that Atom RC. Also, I might as well do the whole spectrum. I'll do the Atom RC Dolphin as well. So those 2 are kind of like what's up for this winter. And I get after Wednesday, I get till right after Christmas off. So lots of time to sit around and build stuff. So, all right. Well, guys, thank you so much. Here's a trivia question I'm going to ask Henrik. Henrik, we had on our first INAV, it was actually our first Wingtalk, we had one guest, and there was only 2 of us who put the show on. Can you remember who the guest was, and which I was one of them, but who was the other person?
To actually be able to answer that, I should have watched the first episode, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
And I haven't. So no idea.
It was Andrew Newton, and Mark and I did the episode. Yeah, he was the first guest we had on, and this was before we discovered Darren. So this is how long ago this was. In 3 years.
Yeah, I haven't seen that much from NU the last days. Oh,
he's been really busy. Are you kidding? Okay. He's like killer. He's done the killer whale. I mean the swordfish. A lot of swordfish reviews, and he's doing a lot of stuff. He's working with different things, working with GPS modules. He's putting out a lot of interesting things. He moved from one part of Australia to another, and so he's kind of flying in a spot that's pretty well abandoned, right on cliffs. He's loving it. I guess one of his buddies lives close by as well, so I see them flying together all the time.
Okay. Maybe he just slipped out of my bubble, and I'll have to reintroduce him again.
Yeah, look him up. His videos.
Yeah, of course. I love his content. To be honest, and I even love it more than Lee's content. Don't tell him.
Oh, we love Lee's content. Yeah.
Yeah, we love that too. So yeah, equally, of course,
equally as much. Yeah, that's right. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. Thank you for watching the holiday special Wingtalk. We get the dancing reindeer and all sorts of stuff happening. Remember, please send all your marzipan to Henrik and Mark.
No, don't. Don't. Please.
And Jan, we'll send you the marzipan from the United States.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us, everybody.
Ask the customs.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for having.